Is that Lauren?
Look, she's kissing him.
I can't believe this. What about her boyfriend?
Dinner's on me. I missed you. Something normal. Something married people say. Then I saw Lauren through the glass, laughing too loudly, leaning too close. That's my wife, I whispered. She touched his arm. He smiled like he belonged there. Evan. Her assistant. The one she told me not to worry about. You're funny, she said, her voice clear even through the window. I learn from the best, Evan said. You. I stepped closer. My phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. Running late. Don't wait up. Liar, I said quietly. She tilted her head. He leaned in. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself to breathe. Then she kissed him. Not a slip. Not a mistake. Her hand rested on his chest. He kissed her back like he'd done it before. A woman near me gasped. Someone laughed. A man said, "Damn." My heart didn't race. It slowed. I felt cold and clear. That's it, I said. I stepped into view. Lauren pulled back first. Her smile vanished. Evan's face drained of color. Oh my God, Lauren said. I started clapping. Slow. Loud. One clap at a time. Heads turned. The cafe went silent. Even the espresso machine seemed to stop. What are you doing? She whispered. I kept clapping. Please, she said. Stop. Evan stood up. Sir, I can explain. I looked at him. Sit down. He did. Lauren walked toward the door. This isn't what it looks like. Really? I said. Because it looks like my wife kissing her assistant. It was a moment, she said. A stupid moment. In public, I said. With witnesses. People were staring now. Phones were out. Lauren's hands were shaking. Can we talk? She asked. Not here. I leaned closer to the glass. You talked enough. She swallowed. I love you. I laughed. It surprised me. No, you don't. Evan stood again. This is my fault. Lauren snapped. Stay out of it. I stopped clapping. The silence was heavier than the noise. When did it start? I asked. She hesitated. That pause told me everything. Answer me, I said. A few weeks, she said. It didn't mean anything. I nodded. That's worse. She reached for me through the open door. I stepped back. Don't touch me, I said. Her eyes filled. You're embarrassing me. That made me smile. Now you know how I feel. A man behind me muttered, awkward. Another voice said, she messed up. Lauren whispered, please, we are married. Yes, I said. We were. I'll quit, Evan said. I'll disappear. I finally looked at him again. You already don't matter. Lauren's breath hitched. Please don't do this. Do what? I asked. React. I made a mistake, she said. No, I said. You made a choice. She grabbed the doorframe. I can fix this. I shook my head. You broke it where everyone could see. Say something, she begged. Yell at me. I stepped back. Silence is all you earned. A woman inside said softly, his calm. That's scary. Lauren looked at me like she didn't recognize me. I don't hate you, I added. I just don't need you. Her knees nearly buckled. You promised forever. I promised loyalty, I said. You changed the deal. Someone clapped once behind me, awkward and unsure. I turned to leave. Wait, she said. Say something else. I paused without looking back. I just did. I crossed the street. Every step felt lighter. Behind me, I heard Lauren sob. Someone whispered her name. Evan called after me once. I didn't stop. A stranger said quietly, good for him. Another said, he handled that clean. I nodded to no one. Inside my car, I whispered, you're free. The engine started. The city noise faded. I said one last thing aloud, just for myself. Never again. I realized I wasn't losing a wife. I was losing a lie I had protected for years. That truth felt brutal, but it also felt honest. It finally felt like peace. The road ahead felt empty, but it felt mine. For the first time, I trusted myself. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt done. By the time I reached the corner, my hands were steady. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I drove away knowing one truth, clear and final. My marriage ended the moment I applauded that I went home alone. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the couch and said, "This is it," to the dark. My phone buzzed immediately. "Please answer," Lauren texted. I locked the screen. Another buzz. "I can explain." I said out loud, "No, you can't." The room felt heavy, but I didn't feel weak. I felt empty, like something had already drained out of me. I remembered our first apartment. "You'll always be my safe place," she had said back then. I laughed quietly. Guess not. My phone kept vibrating. I was scared. It didn't mean anything. "I love you." I put the phone face down. "Love doesn't humiliate," I said. I stood up and walked around the apartment. Every object felt borrowed. The photo frame, the couch, even the bed. "You picked this color," I told the wall. Another message came. "Please talk to me." I whispered, talking never saved us. I grabbed my keys and left. I didn't know where I was going until I was there. Mark opened the door with a beer in his hand. "Dude," he said. "You look calm. That's not normal." "I'm fine," I said. "No, you're not," he said. "You're supposed to be angry." I sat down. "I'm tired." He stared. "That's it. She cheats, and you're tired." "I'm done," I said. Mark leaned forward. "You didn't scream? You didn't demand answers." "I clapped," I said. He blinked. "You what?" "I applauded," I said. "She deserved an ending." "That's cold," he said. "No," I said. "That's controlled." He shook his head. "Man, I would have lost it." "I lost myself for years," I said. "I'm not losing it again." He took a sip. "She's calling everyone. She called me." "I know," I said. "You going to answer her?" "No." "You sure?" "Yes." Mark sighed. "You loved her." "I loved who I thought she was," I said. "That woman doesn't exist." He was quiet for a moment. "You okay?" "I feel hollow," I said. "But I'm not broken." "That scares me more," he said. "It should," I said. "Silence hurts more than shouting." My phone buzzed again. Mark glanced at it. "Her name keeps lighting up." "I see it," I said. "I just don't need to hear it." "You're really done begging," he said. "I begged when I stayed quiet before," I said. "Not anymore." I stood up. "I'm going back." "To her?" he asked. "To myself," I said. He nodded slowly. "Call me if you fall apart." "I won't," I said. At home, I lay on the bed fully dressed. The ceiling fan hummed. "I gave you everything," I said softly. The phone buzzed one last time. "I'm outside." I typed one message. "Go home." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. I turned the phone off. In the silence, memories tried to scream. I didn't let them. I breathed. "I won't fight for someone who chose to shame me," I said. The quiet answered back. For the first time, I listened. I woke up before my alarm and said, "I remember who I was." The words sounded strange in the quiet. I made coffee and didn't rush. Lauren used to say, "You're always in a hurry." I had replied, "Because I have goals." Somewhere along the way, I dropped them. My phone rang. "Don't ignore me," Diane said. "I wasn't," I said. "I was thinking." "That's worse," she said. "Thinking turns into blaming yourself." "I'm not blaming myself," I said. She laughed softly. "You always say that when you are." We met at a small diner. She looked at me and said, "You look lighter." "I feel empty," I said. but not weak. That's progress, she said. I stirred my coffee. I used to be driven. You used to be loud, she said. You filled rooms. I stopped, I said. Lauren needed space to shine. Diane frowned. You didn't give space. You disappeared. I thought that's what love was, I said. She leaned closer. Love doesn't ask you to shrink. I know that now, I said. She reached across the table. You were ambitious. You wanted your own firm. I wanted us to be happy, I said. And she wanted more, Diane said. I nodded. I kept adjusting. Diane sighed. By the time she kissed someone else, you were already gone. I paid the bill and said, thanks for reminding me. Anytime, she said. Don't forget again. When I got home, the apartment felt too quiet. I sat down and said, I miss myself. The doorbell rang. I didn't move. It rang again. I opened the door. Lauren stood there, eyes red, hands shaking. Please, she said. Just listen. I am listening, I said. She stepped inside. It meant nothing. You already said that, I said. She wiped her face. I don't recognize you. I was going to say the same, I said. She looked around. This place feels cold. It's honest, I said. She walked closer. I made a mistake. You made many, I said. She raised her voice. Why won't you fight? Because I fought for years, I said. You just didn't notice. She cried harder. I need you. You want comfort, I said. Not me. That's not fair, she said. I know, I said. Neither was kissing him in public. She flinched. I said I was sorry. I heard you, I said. I just don't accept it. She grabbed my arm. Please don't do this. I pulled away. Don't touch me. Her voice broke. I loved who you were. I loved him too, I said. She whispered, we can fix this. I shook my head. I'm fixing myself. She looked desperate. So that's it. Yes, I said. She sank onto the couch. Say you hate me. I don't, I said. That's the problem. She stared at me. You're numb. I'm awake, I said. I opened the door. You should go. She stood slowly. You'll regret this. I met her eyes. I regret staying. She hesitated. Goodbye. I nodded. Take care. The door closed. I locked it. I leaned against it and said, welcome back. I ran into Evan at the gym near my office. He froze when he saw me. I said, relax. He swallowed. I didn't know you'd be here, he said. Neither did I said. Talk. He stepped closer. Lauren told me it was over. I nodded. She tells stories well. He shook his head. She said you were distant. I laughed once. Distance doesn't mean permission. He sighed. I never meant to hurt you. I looked at the floor. You didn't hurt me. He frowned. Then why do you look so calm? Because I finally see the truth, I said. This isn't about you. He blinked. It feels like it is. It isn't, I said. She chose attention over respect. He rubbed his neck. She said she felt invisible. She hates being ordinary, I said. I spent years making her shine. He hesitated. She cried after you left. She cries when she loses control, I said. That's not love. He lowered his voice. So you don't hate me? No, I said. I pity you. He stiffened. That's worse. Maybe, I said. But it's honest. At work, Rachel noticed my silence. You okay? She asked. I'm clear, I said. She smiled softly. Clear is good. We sat with coffee. You keep blaming yourself, she said. I should have seen it, I said. You trusted your wife, she said. That's not a flaw. I looked up. She needed constant praise. Rachel nodded. Some people confuse love with applause. I exhaled. I clapped when it ended. Rachel met my eyes. That was strength. Later, Evan texted, "I'm quitting." I replied, "Do what you need." He sent, "I'm sorry." I typed, "Take care." I sat alone and said, "I'm not a victim." The words felt solid. I saw the pattern clearly. I had been shrinking so she could feel tall. My phone buzzed. Lauren wrote, "He means nothing." I answered, "He was never the issue." She replied, "Then what is?" "Your choices," I typed. "Your hunger." 3 dots appeared. They vanished. Rachel said later, "You're allowed to walk away." "I am," I said. "And I will." That night, I told myself, clarity is freedom. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done pretending. I said one last thing aloud. She made her choice. I made mine. I slept lightly. Morning came fast. I met Evan again by chance outside the building. He said, "HR asked questions." "Answer honestly," I said. He nodded. She blamed stress. "She always does," I said. He asked, "Why aren't you furious?" "Because fury keeps me tied to her," I said. He looked down. "I feel used." "Now you understand," I said. At lunch, Rachel joined me. "Any regrets?" she asked. "Only that I stayed quiet so long," I said. She tapped the table. "You're speaking now." "I won't chase explanations," I said. "Good," she said. "Explanations trap you in circles." My phone rang. I declined it. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Her?" "Yes," I said. "You okay ignoring that?" "Very," I said. She smiled. "Then let's eat." I tasted food again. I laughed once. Rachel said, "See?" "I do," I said. "I'm not broken." In the afternoon, Mark texted, "You good?" I replied, "Clear." He answered, "Proud of you." I walk home slowly. I said to myself, this ends clean. The anger drained away. What remained was truth and choice. I typed one final message to Lauren, "Please stop contacting me." She responded, "I can't." I wrote, "You must." Silence followed. I welcomed it. I said softly, "You were never my enemy." The street felt open. I breathed easier. I knew then that clarity wasn't cruel. It was kind. I kept walking, saying nothing, holding on to the simple truth that saved me. I arrived home and closed the door. I said, "No more apologies." My phone stayed silent. I smiled at that. I sat down and planned tomorrow. Goals returned quietly. I said, "I choose myself." Outside, traffic moved on. I let it go. I wasn't alone anymore. I had me. I checked the mirror and said, "Stand tall." The reflection agreed. I wrote a list. Gym, work, sleep, peace. It felt possible. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. I ignored it. I lay back and whispered, "Enough." Silence answered, and this time, it sounded right. I breathed slowly, letting the day end. I thought of nothing and smiled faintly. Tomorrow waited without drama. I welcomed that too. I closed my eyes and said, "Freedom." Sleep came gently. My chest felt light. I knew the truth would hold. I promised myself this calm would stay. No chasing. No proving. Just living. The night passed. I was ready. I stood steady in my own life, choosing peace every single day from now on, without fear or regret anymore at all. I moved out on a Sunday morning with 2 suitcases and my laptop bag. The new apartment smelled like paint and quiet. I said, "This is mine." The landlord asked, "You settling in?" "I am," I said. I unpacked slowly. I put my clothes away and said, "Fresh start." At the gym, the trainer asked, "What's your goal?" "To feel strong again," I said. He nodded. "We can do that." I lifted until my arms shook. I breathed and said, "Keep going." At work, my manager said, "You're focused." I cleared distractions, I said. He smiled. Promotion talk soon. That night, I sat in a therapist's office. She said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I stopped speaking." She asked, "With whom?" "My wife," I said. She waited. "I learned silence protects me," I said. She nodded. "Say it again." "I choose myself," I said. Outside, my phone buzzed. Lauren stood across the street. She waved. I said, "No." She crossed over. "You look good." "I feel better," I said. She smiled. "Remember our Sundays?" "I remember why they ended," I said. She said, "We could talk." "We already did," I said. She reached out. I stepped back. "Don't shut me out," she said. "I shut the door," I said. At therapy, I told the truth. I stayed to keep peace. The therapist said, "At what cost?" "Myself," I said. At the gym, Mark called. "You free tonight?" "I am," I said. He laughed. "You sound solid." "I am," I said. Lauren texted, "I miss us." I typed, "I don't." She replied, "You used to fight." "I used to bleed," I said. She sent, "You win." I didn't reply. At work, I closed deals. My boss said, "Keep this pace." "I will," I said. One evening, Lauren waited by my car. "Please," she said. I said, "I won't react." She cried. "Say something." "I am saying everything by leaving," I said. She whispered, "This hurts." I nodded. "That means it works," I said. She stepped back. "Goodbye." I opened the car. "Take care," I said. I drove home calm. I cooked dinner and said, "Peace." In bed, I thought clearly. "I don't need closure," I said. The phone stayed quiet. I slept well. Morning came. I smiled. "This is mine," I said. I walked forward without looking back. I showered early and said, "Discipline." At breakfast, I planned my week. The therapist asked, "Any urges to respond?" "No," I said. She smiled. Power shift. At lunch, Rachel asked, "You okay?" "I am," I said. She said, "You seem taller." "I stopped shrinking," I said. Lauren called. I declined. Rachel nodded. That choice speaks. "I know," I said. At the gym, I added weight. "Careful," the trainer said. "I trust myself," I said. Sweat fell. I smiled. That night, Mark said, "She posted memories." I muted them, I said. He whistled. Savage. "Quiet," I said. Lauren messaged, "We had dreams." I replied, "I have plans." She typed, "You changed." "I grew," I said. The therapist asked, "How do you feel?" "Relieved," I said. She said, "Then keep going." I signed a lease extension. The landlord said, "Staying long?" "Yes," I said. At work, applause came. I nodded. I remembered clapping. "This time it's earned," I said. Lauren stood far away watching. I didn't wave. She left. I felt taller. I cooked again. I laughed alone. "I don't chase anymore," I said. Silence stayed. I welcomed it. Morning light came. I stretched. "Control," I said. Rachel texted, "Coffee?" "Yes," I said. She smiled across the table. "You did this," she said. "I did," I said. My phone stayed quiet. I paid the bill. I stood straight. "Enough," I said. I walked out steady. The city moved. I moved too. No anger. No noise. Just choice. I breathed. "Mine," I said. I checked my calendar. Goals filled it. I smiled. Lauren didn't exist there. I closed the app. At night, I journaled. "I am free," I wrote. Sleep came. Dreams stayed quiet. Morning returned. I dressed sharp. "Forward," I said. At work, praise followed. I accepted calmly. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I declined. Peace held. I nodded. This is revenge, I said. Walking away strong. No words. No fights. Just life. I lived. I chose me. Always. I smiled. The day ended. I rested. Ready again. Tomorrow waited. I welcomed it. Power stayed. Quiet won. I closed my eyes. Done. I breathed slow. Calm stayed. I promised myself. Never return, I said. The room agreed. I stood firm. Peace grew. I slept. Morning smiled. I did too. Strength stayed. Choice held. Freedom lived. I moved. Ahead. Only. Forward. Now. Always. Mine. 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 I didn't hear it from Lauren. I heard it from Mark first. He called and said, "You sitting down?" I said, "Always." He said, "Her office found out." I asked, "How?" He said, "Someone leaked photos." I said, "Figures." Mark laughed nervously. "Hours involved." I said, "I'm not surprised." He lowered his voice. Evan's freaking out. I said, "He should." Later, Diane called. "Your ex is spiraling," she said. I replied, "I'm not watching." She said, "You don't have to. It's loud." At work, Rachel said, "People are talking." I shrugged. "I'm not." She leaned closer. "They say Lauren's been suspended." I said, "Actions of weight." Mark texted, "Friends are picking sides." I replied, "They always do." He wrote, "Most pick distance." I typed, "Smart." Days passed. I stayed quiet. My phone stayed calm. Then Evan messaged. I didn't think it would end like this. I answered, "Endings reveal truth." He sent, "She's blaming everyone." I replied, "That's familiar." Diane called again. She lost clients, she said. I asked, "Anything else?" Diane sighed. "She's angry." I said, "Anger isn't power." Mark sent a voice note. "She tried calling you." I said, "I know." He asked, "You going to help?" I replied, "No." That night, my phone rang. I stared at the name. Lauren. I let it ring. It rang again. I answered. "Please," she said. "I need you." I said, "What happened?" "They're questioning everything," she said. "My reputation is ruined." I stayed silent. "You're the only one who understands me," she said. I said, "I understand choices." She cried. "I'm scared." I said, "So was I." "Can you talk to someone?" she asked. "Say something." I said, "No." She gasped. "You can't leave me like this." "I didn't," I said. "You left me publicly." She whispered, "I made a mistake." "You made many," I said. "I'll do anything," she said. I paused. I felt a flicker of pity. It passed. "I won't save you," I said. She sobbed. "I thought you loved me." "I loved the marriage," I said. "You didn't." She shouted, "You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm letting reality work." She went quiet. "So this is karma." I answered, "This is consequence." She said softly, "I'm alone." I replied, "So am I. I'm just not afraid." She hung up. The silence felt clean. The next day, Mark said, "She resigned." I nodded. That was coming. Diane added, "People stopped answering her." I said, "Now she knows." Rachel asked, "How do you feel?" I said, "Steady." She smiled. "That's rare." Evan texted again. "HR let me go." I replied, "I hope you learn." He said, "I was stupid." I answered, "We all choose." I walk home slowly. I said aloud, I didn't touch anything. The truth felt solid. Lauren didn't call again. I slept well. In the morning, Mark texted, "It's bad for her." I replied, "It's honest." Diane sent, "You okay?" I wrote, "Better than okay." At lunch, Rachel said, "You never once interfered." I said, "Karma doesn't need help." She nodded. That's power. I went back to work and focused. The world kept moving. I stayed still inside. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply watched the storm pass. I whispered once, "This isn't revenge." It was truth doing its job. Lauren asked to meet. She texted, "Please. One last conversation." I stared at the message and said, "Closure, not comfort." I replied, "Tomorrow. Café on Pine." She arrived early. I arrived calm. She stood when she saw me and said, "Thank you for coming." I sat and said, "Say what you came to say." She twisted her hands. I ruined everything. I nodded. You did. She flinched. I'm sorry. I answered, I know. She leaned forward. I regret it. I said, that's clear. She frowned. Why aren't you angry? I said, anger would mean I still want something. She whispered, I miss you. I asked, which part? She hesitated. The way you were. I said, you mean steady. She looked down. You made life feel safe. I smiled faintly. That's not love. She snapped, then what is? I replied, respect. She wiped her eyes. I didn't think you'd leave. I said, that was the mistake. She shook her head. I thought you'd fight. I answered, I fought before the kiss. She reached across the table. I pulled my hand back. She said, please don't shut me out. I said, I didn't. You pushed me out. Her voice broke. I'm lonely. I replied, loneliness doesn't excuse betrayal. She whispered, I miss our life. I said, I don't. She stared. How can you say that? I answered, because it wasn't real anymore. She raised her voice. It meant something to me. I said, not enough to protect it. She cried harder. I would do anything to go back. I said, I wouldn't. She asked, why? I said, because I know what waits there. She clenched her jaw. You're different. I nodded. You taught me. She said, I didn't mean to hurt you. I replied, intent doesn't erase impact. She leaned back. So this is it. I said, this was it when you kissed him. She whispered, in public. I answered, exactly. She covered her face. I was reckless. I said, you were confident. She looked up. That's cruel. I replied, it's honest. She begged, can we try again? I said, no. She asked, why not? I answered, because trust doesn't respawn. She stared at me like a stranger. I don't recognize you. I said, you stopped seeing me years ago. She shook her head. I loved you. I replied, you loved what I provided. She said quietly, you were always there. I answered, until I wasn't. She swallowed. I need you. I said, you need stability. Her shoulders sagged. So I lost you. I nodded. The moment you disrespected me publicly. She whispered, I didn't think it would end us. I replied, you didn't think about us. She cried in silence. I waited. She finally asked, is there anything I can say? I said, no. She nodded slowly. Then say goodbye. I stood. Goodbye. She stood too. Take care. I said, you too. She reached for a hug. I stepped back. She froze. Right, she said. I turned to leave. She said behind me, I'll always regret this. I paused. That's yours to carry. Outside, I breathed in cool air. My phone stayed quiet. My chest felt light. I said softly, "This is the end." I walked away without looking back. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel sad. I felt finished. And that was enough. Time passed, slow but steady. I woke up one morning and said, "Who am I now?" I didn't rush for an answer. Instead, I built one. Rachel called. "Coffee?" I said, "Sure." We talked without pressure. No history between us. Just two people. She smiled and said, "You look different." I nodded. "I feel different." "How so?" she asked. I said, "Clear." She laughed softly. "Clear is good." I told her, "Betrayal didn't break me." She nodded. "It reveals you." I smiled faintly. "I'm still here." Work felt lighter. I spoke up in meetings. Rachel said, "You sound confident." I said, "I'm learning to be." She added, "It suits you." At home, I cooked dinners. I said, "I'm taking care." It felt good. I slept deep. No nightmares. One night, Rachel texted, "Want to watch a movie?" I said, "Yes." We didn't talk about us. Just the movie. It was easy. I thought about Lauren less. I told myself, she's not my center. No hate. No anger. Just distance. Friends noticed. Mark said, "You've changed." I said, "I outgrew the past." Diane called. "You're stronger." I said, "Stronger doesn't mean perfect." She laughed. "No one expects that." I sat in the park and said, "Peace isn't quiet. It's choice." I chose peace. Rachel joined me. "You're calm." I said, "I am." She asked, "Love again?" I shrugged. "Not rushing." She smiled. "Good." I looked at the sky. Betrayal showed me who I am. Rachel nodded. "Better than before." I said, "I'm building myself." She said, "I'm glad." One evening, I caught my reflection. I said, "You look like a man who survived." I touched the glass. Not broken. Whole. Lauren crossed my mind once. I said, "I don't hate her." Rachel asked, "Why?" "Because hate is heavy," I said. "I'm lighter now." She said, "That's growth." I nodded. I'm ready for what's next. Work called. I answered with focus. I said, "I'm here." Rachel texted, "Dinner tomorrow." I replied, looking forward. I said aloud, "I'm not the man before her." I smiled. "I'm better." I walked home calm. I said, "This is me." The night was quiet. I slept with hope. I dreamed of peace. Morning came. I woke and said, "I am enough." Rachel called again. "Ready?" I said, "Always." I stepped outside. The world felt open. I said, "This is my life." No chains. No regrets. Just me. Finally free. Strong. Clear. Whole. The man after the fall. Standing tall. I still see it clearly, the applause. Not just the sound but the feeling. That slow, deliberate clap standing across the street, watching Lauren kiss Evan like she owned the world. I told myself I was calm then, but I didn't really understand why. Now I do. It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't cruelty. It was acceptance. I remember standing there, people staring, whispers swirling around us like smoke. Lauren's eyes locked onto mine, freezing in that moment. I felt something settle inside me, a quiet strength I hadn't known I had. Mark once asked, "Why didn't you yell? Shout. Stop it." I told him, because sometimes, silence and a slow clap say more than words ever could. I walked away that day without a word, but that applause was my final message. I was done begging for respect, done chasing explanations that didn't exist. Rachel asked me later, "Did you regret it?" I said, "No. That clap was my goodbye. Not to her, but to who I used to be." I thought about Lauren less with each passing day. Not because I hated her, hate felt too heavy, but because I outgrew the need for her validation. I no longer needed her in my story. One evening, Diane said, "You sound peaceful now. Like you finally own your life." I smiled. I do. I've learned that dignity isn't loud. It doesn't crash or burn. It's quiet, steady, and unbreakable. Walking away was the hardest and strongest thing I've done. I remember the silence after the applause. That emptiness that felt like freedom. I thank myself for choosing that moment, for choosing me. I didn't look back, because looking back would mean stepping into chaos again. I told Rachel, "I'm not perfect. I'm just whole." She said, "That's what matters." At work, when I succeed, I hear a silent clap in my mind. Not for vanity, but for survival. One day, Lauren crossed my mind. I felt nothing but clarity. No anger. No regret. Just peace. I realized I was no longer the man who stood there watching that kiss. I was better. Stronger. More myself. I'm not defined by betrayal. I'm defined by what I did after.
I chose myself.
Every day. I chose dignity over chaos. And that changed everything. That applause was not an end. It was a beginning. A promise I made to myself to never settle for less. I walk forward alone, but I am whole. I don't need a crowd to hear me. I don't need anyone's approval. Because I have my own. That slow clap was my victory. Quiet, sure, and unshakable. And I carry it with me. Always. The story isn't about her anymore. It's about me. About standing tall in my own light. About knowing when to fight, and when to let go. About finding peace in silence. I breathe deep and say, "This is my life." No apologies. No tears. Just applause. For me. Finally free. Finally whole. And that is enough.